All righty. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Brandon Burbank, and thank you so much for tuning into another Comeback to Success YouTube video here on my YouTube channel, Brandon Burbank or Birdman Burbank. And you guys, I have the pleasure and the great opportunity to talk with Carl Walsh. Carl has spent 20 years as an actor and director and switched to business, working for companies such as the Walt Disney Company and Smart and Final Stores because he found it more rewarding. He is the co-host of the podcast, The Oval Table, which focuses on business. Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Walsh. Now, Carl, is there anything you'd like to say before we continue on in this presentation that's going to focus on mental health?
Oh, not at all. I'm just happy to be here. I've lived some years and gone through troubles and successes, and hopefully I can add a little something to what you're doing here.
Awesome. Yeah. Alrighty. So for those of you guys watching this, we're going to go through 6 questions that just focuses on mental health and a little bit on personal development, because the two come in together and they're so important with each other. And so I think that I believe that Carl has a lot of insight and direction that's going to help a lot of people out there that are trying to come back to success, create wealth, build resiliency, and become more happier as an individual. But with that being said, we're going to focus more on personal development and mental health and try and keep it more focused with that. So to start with, question number 1, what is your definition of good mental health for a human being? Carl, do you want to take a stab?
Sure, yeah, sure. I think you got to be able to answer the question, what's your purpose? What is it that you're here for? What is it that you want to accomplish? And what sort of legacy do you want to leave behind? I think that gets people focused on the important things. Now, of course, when we're talking about mental health, there's all kinds of reasons for it. There can be physical reasons, there can be chemical reasons in the brain. But I think a lot of people think they're having mental health issues when in fact they're just unfocused. And my advice to many, many people is, first of all, find a purpose that you believe in. Find something that you enjoy. I have always found if I'm not enjoying what I do, I perform poorly. And then that's depressing right there, isn't it? So always find something that you enjoy doing. When I was in a job that I didn't like anymore, I left. And I went to another job, and that got me into some really great places that it was exciting. It was enjoyable, and I loved every minute. I couldn't wait to get into the office to work. I mean, when you're living a life like that, you're firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, just I would say my take on that as well. What is your definition of good mental health for a human being? That is when you have wellness and a general overall balance in your life, and balance is key for anything out there. If we want to be successful, we have to have that balance and understand that there's so many facets in life that we need to enrich our lives, help us feel welcomed and also accepted internally. And the mental health aspect really outlines the mental aspect for our lives as we continue to progress and develop as human beings, and also personally develop ourselves personally, which starts from within yourself, your heart, within your mind, and the willpower that you believe that you can reach those heights that they say that you can't, but you know internally that you can accomplish those heights.
So I think that's great. One thing that I would add to it, and this is going to be a little controversial here, is that I think in our culture in the United States, we have abandoned to a large extent our involvement with the arts. And I find personally in my life that the arts, and I'm talking about music, I'm talking about painting, which is available in any major city. Go in there and see the great artists. Theater. I think Hollywood largely lets us down. Hollywood is, for the most part, taken up with either eye candy or terribly depressing stories. And none of that helps us as we go through life. It used to be in theater in particular, rather than dazzling the eye, they focused on dazzling the mind and making the mind work and seeing different perspectives and seeing things through different lenses so that you understand other people and where you fit in. And I think that's terribly important for a person being able to find their center and being able to find their balance.
Yeah, that's a great point, and definitely your experience with doing acting and drama and your college background is something that really, I think. What did you study in college, by the way? Was it
Well,
acting?
guess what? Theater arts.
Okay, I thought it was, but I wanted to make sure because
Yeah. I was a theater arts major at UCLA. And when I finished the major, I had another year to go and I didn't want to go through that. So I auditioned for the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London and amazingly got in. They auditioned over 2,000 people for 21 places. And that's where I really did my learning. And that's where
wow.
I learned my craft.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you for bringing up that point on the arts aspect of mental health and how it enriches our lives. Because I think that that's something that there's a lot of people in our in this world that choose to not embellish themselves in the arts itself. And
Well, we tend to in this culture to consider them unimportant, just an entertainment, just a waste of time. They are not. They absolutely are not. When you can see the world through other people's eyes, that's a tremendous addition to your life and to your perspective.
yeah, we could go on about that, but let's
Yeah.
continue question number two, which is, what is your definition of good mental health for those living with a mental illness? Carl, do
Ah,
you want to
well,
take a stab at it?
well, I'll tell you. First of all, get help. I mean, you don't live with it. I when I was at Disney and at the real height of my life, I was, I had the perfect job in the perfect company, and I got married and I had the perfect wife and we had a child on the way. And all of a sudden I lost both my wife and my child. Um, and I was devastated. Um, and I mean, I'll always have the funerals and everything, burned into my psyche. But, and this is important, I thought I could handle it. But after about 6 months, I realized I couldn't, not alone. I couldn't do it alone. I tried to live my life as fully as I could, but it didn't work. So I finally broke down and I sought help. And that help, it took a few months. It took a few months, but it got me straight again and got me back on the path. Now, the wounds and the scars will always remain. They're there, but you can't let that get in the way of your future and of your
Yeah.
present. That was then. And so I think that's my most important message to people. I think there's a lot of people walking around who could use a little help, not long term. Don't spend years in psychotherapy or anything, but most health insurances cover it. And you spend a few months and maybe that's all you need to get straightened out and back on track.
Interesting. Well, thank you, Carl, for sharing your input on that. And I
Mm.
was going to answer it from my point of view because,
Yes, you should.
for one thing, many of you guys know I'm bipolar, and so my take on mental health has really changed dramatically since I was diagnosed with bipolar at the age of 19. I'm currently 25 years old. And what is your definition of good mental health for those living with a mental illness? Well, number one is just like what I talk about in my book, Come Back to Success, Relentless Commitment for a Better Tomorrow. I say, find out what works best for you and your mental illness. That's key. Now, I say that because different people have different ways of how they cope with their mental illness, their diagnosis, their mental health condition. And so learning what works best for you is going to be different than the next person right next to
Mhm.
you that has depression, anxiety, bipolar, or any other mental illness out there. And so that's why that's really the biggest component that I could say. And I don't want to go into too much depth because we have a couple more questions
Okay.
answer. So, yeah, we'll just
And
go on to the. Sorry, did you want to add something, Carl?
yeah, I just want to say one of the best ways to find out what's right for you is seeking help. Not from your friends, not from Facebook. Get a professional who knows what they're doing and knows what they're looking at, and get the help that you need. Don't suffer with this alone.
That's well said, Carl. I totally agree with you on that. So that's that's question number two. Moving on to the next question, which is how does personal development make an impact on one's mental health? Carl, do you want to answer that?
Well, they're interlocked, aren't they? If you don't develop personally, that's a form of retardation, isn't it? If you're keeping yourself back and not developing yourself as a person, as a professional, as somebody who is useful in society, useful to your family, you've got to do that. And there's many approaches to doing that. Again, if you're having trouble, some professional help might be on order, but for a lot of people, no, that's not necessary. There are so many books out there. There are so many ways, so many things on online from reputable people, and please make sure that you're going to reputable people um, that can help you in self development. But you can't self develop until you figure out what it is you want to be, until you figure out who you want to be.
I think it's with the why too. If you know the why you're doing
Yeah,
this, why you're doing that, why you're living your life, it gets easier and it starts to click.
right, right.
So
And that's how you figure out who the heck you are anyway.
yeah, and then just kind of like to bounce that off of with Carl, your whole aspect with personal development. I think it's a matter of taking the. I think the retardation was a little bit too out there, but still, like the way I see it is, you can either be going up or down. You can't do anything in between. So
Mm,
life is a matter of okay, do you want to be moving forward in life or just be moving backwards in life? And as an individual with bipolar disorder, I choose to get up out of bed every day and tell myself, okay, I am going to try and be the best person I can be the best version I am of myself and better than I was yesterday. And guess what? It's working out pretty well for me. And I can guarantee for those 50 million plus adult Americans and millions of youth, adolescents with a mental illness, that you guys can definitely do follow in the footsteps of what I'm laying for a foundation work for success and longevity for life.
you're absolutely right. If you're not moving forward, you're holding yourself back. And yeah, it's worse than that. You're actually failing. You're falling.
So, on that note, what are some tangible ways for others faced with mental health struggles or a mental health condition to come back to success? So, just to give you some context, Carl, the comeback to success part is something that is from my book,
Mhm.
which focuses because when you get a diagnosis, you might be successful and thriving, but then once you become like diagnosed with something with a mental health condition, it changes your life. And from my perspective, I'm speaking my truth to you right now. So that's why I titled that question with "Come Back to Success."
Right. Well, I think we've gone through several steps on how you get back to success. It's the personal development part. It's finding out what your purpose is. It's finding out who you are and what do you want anyway? What do you want? How many people wander around where they have no idea what they want?
A lot of people.
A lot of people, you bet. And so you got to get at least some focus on those issues. Personal development, find your balance, find your stability, what makes you tick, and then find out what you want.
Yeah.
And I think once you do that, you can probably move back to success, as you say.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for answering that, Carl. I think you just have a lot of good insight, and
Mhm.
your experience with being in the drama and theater and acting industry, and also to business management with the companies. Your your expertise and knowledge is something that I think a lot of people can learn to gravitate towards. And when it comes to the mental health aspect, my profession and expertise is more focused with mental health and also with entrepreneurship, as I'm building comeback to success from the ground up. So I think we have a lot in common in that way, because you have a lot of ambitions to help people and to help make changes in our lives, to help improve the lives of others, and be focused on something that's bigger than yourself, essentially.
That's right. That's right. You know, I know it's not fashionable to um, adhere to a religion these days, and frankly, I don't either. I'm agnostic. However, the great principles that have been laid down in the great religions, not the corruptions that people have put on them since the founders. I'm talking about the core principles. They all agree. And those principles are incredibly important. And you don't have to be religious to do this. You just look at it from the standpoint of personal development and what's best and what works in life. People came to these realizations thousands of years ago, and they got it right. People have corrupted them since. But if you go back to the beginning, if you go back to the core, these things can be tremendously helpful.
Yeah. And then also, uh, just what are some tangible ways for others to grow and spark change in their life to become the best version of themselves?
Well, I think entrepreneurship is a great way. And and entrepreneurship, it doesn't mean you have to start your own company. You don't have to do that. You can be an entrepreneur within a company. If you can figure out better ways to do things, if you can figure out what's wrong and be able to express that in a meaningful and respectful manner and get changes done, that's a form of entrepreneurship right there.
That's
Uh,
great.
yeah, you know, change your life, change your environment, change
Change your
um,
income.
yeah, change your income. That has a
We
lot
all want
to
that.
do with it. Look, money is not the greatest motivator in business.
It's the why,
And
in my opinion.
it's a it's but study after study shows that that's not the biggest motivator. It's an important one. It's a very important one. In fact, you know, I left a company that I loved, but I realized I was never going to be able to buy a home. I was never going to be able to afford a family, a new car, you know, all that. And I was being offered an 80% raise. Well, you know, you got to take it, right? So money's important, but satisfaction and acknowledgement from managers, and we talk about that a lot in our podcast, how employees should be
The
treated.
Oval Table podcast.
Right, the Oval Table podcast. We talk a lot about how management has to treat employees, particularly nowadays, where it's no longer the old days where, oh, just be happy you have a
Yeah.
job and shut up. It's not that way anymore. Employees have expectations, and you should have those expectations for yourself. You should go out and get that.
Yeah. Thank you, Carl. And then the final question that we have for tonight is, what are some essential elements for someone to maintain mental wellness? And I'll start with this. Some of the essential elements are embedded in my book, Come Back to Success, Relentless Commitment for a Better Tomorrow, where I discuss a lot of different healthy habits. For example, another book referral by James Clear called Atomic Habits. And there's just a lot of
James
other.
Clear is great. Everybody should get on his mailing list, on his email list.
So
You're right.
in my book, I talk a lot about how some of his ideas and concepts can really help change lives and change the habits of all of us so that we can become the best version of ourselves. Essentially, what we're doing is we're letting go of things, and we're embracing more of who we are as a person,
Right.
so that we can find what is our calling, what our purpose is in this lifetime, in our lives, because we are all unique as human beings. And once you start to realize that, because I already recognize that within myself, but once you, all the viewers out there that are watching this, learn, you might already be in a different place than I am, than and Carl as well. But guess what? Changes become monumental when this realization is comes to fruition.
Right. And there's, again, studies have shown it doesn't have to be a big change in the beginning. You change one small habit, and your brain actually starts rewiring itself when you change that habit. And suddenly you become open to more changes and more changes. And suddenly, after a year or two, you look back, you're a different person. And maybe you're a much better person than you were before, a much stronger person, a much more centered
The
person.
key word is try.
Yeah,
Every day,
exactly.
every day
And
we have a
start small.
choice. We have a choice. Do we want to
Yeah.
try, or do we just give up?
Yeah, start small, and your brain will start rewiring itself. It's amazing how it happens. They've actually seen it on scanners,
So Carl,
how that
relating to
happens.
maintaining mental wellness, what would your last take be on for that, for
um
maintaining mental wellness?
Maintaining mental wellness is, yeah, if there's so many ways, but once you get yourself to a good place, don't backslide. Don't fall back into old habits, old thought processes. Once you get yourself there, continue to move forward, because
Awesome.
the fact that you got yourself there means you're on the right path.
Yeah, that's great. I think that we'll wrap up with that. And Carl, ladies and gentlemen, Carl Walsh. Carl, thanks so much for being a part of this video that aims to inspire and motivate others who have had struggles with mental health and/or are striving to become the best version of themselves. So this wraps up the video, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, and look forward to sharing more content in the future. And yeah, guys, take care. Thanks.